morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folarin. Hope you had a great weekend. I thought we might, kick off this week looking at the polity as we often do, but in particular, a conference that sort of held last week. It was, last week before the last, talking about the APC's conference in the Southwest. And indeed, what they were looking at was the whole idea of the challenge of restructuring in Nigeria. This has been an idea that's been with us for quite a while. I don't know if to call it a kite. It was first flown, as you know, by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. He's always held that belief. But when the Southwest, from the APC, got together in the Southwest, they had all but one of the four governors in attendance, the exception being our governor, the governor of Lagos State, Governor Ambode. And a lot of ideas came down there. One thing that was pervading everything else was a sense of dissatisfaction with the way things currently are. In fact, Governor Aregbesola, who was there, said that Nigeria is poor, actually, even though it keeps on being touted that we are rich, or at least potentially rich. There were ideas such as, well, you see, this wealth is concentrated in only a few hands, and so stop saying we're rich, we're actually poor. That was on the one hand. Other ideas like the Southwest has been marginalized in power. Well, there was someone there, and I thought we'd invite him over, and we were so lucky to be able to get Honorable Olawale Oshun, chairman of Afenifere Renewal Group and former chief whip in the House of Representatives. Thank you very much for coming on, Honorable Wale Oshun.
Thank you very much.
You were at that conference.
Yes, I was.
And my read of it was that by and large, there was a sense of dissatisfaction with the present state of our structure that led to a call for restructure. Now, perhaps we have to get that out of the way very, very early. What exactly is restructuring in the sense of the Conference of the Southwest APC?
Well, thank you very much. Talking about restructuring, I think I need to clear one general public misconception. It's always been, restructuring is about dismantling the country. No, restructuring in the way that the Southwest had advocated it, in fact, since 1993, and even earlier than that by Alawa Akabashorun, Bekor and Somkuti, and before it became the sing-song after the annulment of the election, has to do with how to make this country much more united, stronger, but stronger because the people who are the federating units are federating voluntarily and deciding to give up certain elements of their sovereignty so that the country can remain united and strong. So restructuring is not about dismantling the country. It's not about that. Now, the essential thing, when you say restructuring, is about talking about the structure of the country. And structure of the country has many aspects, which of course we also need to look at. Are you talking about the governance? Are you talking about the resources? Now, are you talking about security? Now, if you talk about governance, for instance, and you say, yes, let us restructure this country, you are looking at many things. For instance, people are saying, and of course we are saying, that what you have presently is a presidential system. And we have seen over the years how expensive it is to run a presidential system. Is it, in fact, having somebody emerge as president or emerge as a presidential candidate? Billions go into such an exercise. But this is a poor country. I mean, Aregbesola made that point. That it's a poor country by all stretch of imagination.
Even though it's constantly said that we are potentially very, very rich.
Potentially, yes, sir. potentially this is a rich country, but we are a poor country as talking about the present status. Now, but we spent...
Sorry, is it felt, what you've just said,
Yes.
that that's a function, a direct function of the current structure
Yeah,
that we operate?
of course, it's one of the consequences of the structure, because what should be natural resources of this country, you have quite a large chunk of it going into funding administration, the bureaucracy of governance. Now, you look at the present structure. I was defining or talking about the various aspects of what we intend to look at when we talk of restructuring. But then, very now, talking about cost of governance, you look at the National Assembly, you look at the executive arm of government. Now, each member of the National Assembly and each president or governor spends huge sums of money to get into office. And we are saying that it is so because the structure that recommended the presidential system of government made it so. But if you have a parliamentary system of government, for instance, the president or the prime minister that emerges later on is just a member from his own constituency. But at the end of the day, the party with the majority members will now pick amongst themselves. Of course, they would always have a leader, but it doesn't contest across the whole country. So you look at that the structure, which one pays a poor country like ours? Is it a presidential system or a parliamentary system? That's an aspect of restructuring.
That's an aspect of it.
You can now move on and then talk about the legislative arm of government. And you say that, okay, do you need a bicameral institution as we presently have? And do the two arms of government, do they need to be full-time or do they need to be part-time? Or do you need to have one of them to be full-time and the other one part-time? Now, that is also talking about restructuring that legislative arm. You are looking at the judiciary. Now, you want to say that this is a big country, multi-ethnic, multinational, multi-religious. Why do you need to have an appellate court that is controlled at source, at the center? That perhaps all the federating units could have, an appellate court, so that only vital issues like constitutional determination of constitutional issues that will now go to the Supreme Court of the Federation. That also is an aspect that can be looked at in a restructuring. I mean, so you can go on.
There are different aspects
of restructuring,
and,
things that we will need to think out with to have a country that is efficient. Now you talk of resources. In fact, that anytime you talk of restructuring, those who oppose restructuring always look at the aspect of resources, resource management. But there are those who also look at the aspect of power control. That, I mean, once you have the power, you control the resources, you control the security. Now you can also look at resources and say that the federating units, now in the first instance, who are the federating units? Is it the 36 states that we have? Those who cannot even on their own stand, they cannot pay their civil servants. 27 of 36 states are owing 6 months' salary and above. They cannot even pay. So those cannot be. That's also an aspect of restructuring. That what we are talking about here is that why would you make a federating unit so weak that it cannot stand on its own to support its own services, its own activities? It's an aspect.
Well, as you know, the federating units, yes, if we consider the states, that came about as a result of the yearnings of their people, and that was probably an instance where there was a political concession. Yes. They weren't being rational at the time. Yes. It has often been said that, as you have just indicated, not all states are viable, yes, but nevertheless we have them there. You spoke about the National Assembly. I think Babangida on his 75th birthday has spoken about his regret being that, you know, he didn't sort of, when he could, talk about a part-time
Yes.
parliament. Are these the kind of things you're talking about that we are not and have not cut our coat according to our cloth?
Yeah, but precisely that, because when you talk of the number of states now, it isn't, even in the First Republic, when we had the parliamentary system and we had, you will still have provincial heads of administration. No one is saying that the states should be scrapped any moment from now. No. But if you have strong federating units, like geopolitical zones as is being demanded, in fact, across the country now, really, because it's not confined to the Southwest alone. The South-South rose from a meeting, demanded it. Southeast did. North Central, you'll be surprised at Confab, they did. Now, Northeast, even if you look at the problems of Boko Haram, is an indirect way of also saying that there is a need for certain measure of restructuring, thinking with the political arrangement that will not make 90% of the population groveling under poverty and a small percentage living in luxury. And I think if you look at that, you are now talking of which model of government that would be quite efficient in terms of delivering what you call the dividends of democracy, as people put it on the street, but that would allow all the federating units to recognize that, one, they are basically different people. Because if you say you want a united country, it does not mean that I and Yori must think the same way, must wear the same set of clothing, must worship God in the same way. I mean, you have Christians, you have Muslims, you have people who worship in their traditional methods of worship, which we now deride, but which we have no right to deride. Now, so you have those differences. We speak in different tongues, languages. Now, these differences can never be removed. It would always be there.
We're not going to go away.
It will not go away. You see an Hausa man with his cap, you know he is. And you see a Yoruba man with his gobi, you know he is. And it is not likely that majority of Yoruba people will now switch to the Hausa cap, or the majority of Hausa people will now shift to the gobi cap. It is not likely. In spite of all the interactions we've always had, when you get to Abuja, you still see the differences in terms of dressing, in terms of mannerisms. So what the restructuring then makes a demand of is that these different people in their own federating areas can pursue goals of development in the way they have seen it. So that you pursue your development, you may decide, for instance, to lay emphasis on agriculture. I tell you, in this country today, the northern parts of the country, because of its vastness, is much more efficient when it comes to agriculture. They feed the whole country. In terms of food security, they have it. Now, the Southwest used to, but cannot say that it has any food security anymore. Now, you may decide that, okay, we pursue agriculture and feed the rest, and some other person may decide that, well, all we need to do is to be middlemen, do the trading, and then some others can say, we want to be the technicians, we want to be the artisans.
And you think that this idea, such as you are espousing at the moment, can be in full swing without compromising the unity of the country? Because you started off by saying that it's not about splitting the country up.
The unity of the country, let's put it this way.
What would you say to a critic who would say that, Honorable Oshun, are you not emphasizing the
Differences.
differences much more than, those that unite us.
No, but it is the diversity that makes a nation. Look at the United States of America. Till today, you still find this is an Italian American. This is an African American.
This is an Irish American.
This is an Irish American. Yeah. And the Irish American, of course, they are everywhere. They like where we sort of started.
That's right.
But
and they celebrate the Irish national
oh,
days.
they do.
But
in spite of that, an American will tell you this is the greatest country in the world because he believes in it. Now, ask a Nigerian. So, have you developed that concept of greatness? That I would say, yes, this is my country. I believe in this country. It's the greatest country in the world. Now, if I can say so, it will be because, this is a politician. Maybe they are watching him somewhere. He wants something. But quite a number of people will tell you behind and say, they don't want to die for the country. Now, but if you get it to a point where we all know we are in this together, that I can run my education.
What is militating against that right now?
What is militating against it is that, for instance, take the case of Lagos State. About 70 to 75% of all VAT taxation comes from Lagos State. Now, 70% thereabout of all imports come through Apapa Port and Tinkan Island. And I don't know when you pass through Apapa Oshodi Expressway last. But for the generosity of Governor Ambode, who carried out some patchworks, the whole of that stretch was in a terrible state. But imagine if the collection of VAT and then the collection of port charges are to be made by Lagos State, and then it pays tax thereon to the federal government. Nobody will tell Governor Ambode to fix that very important express road on a continual basis. Now, imagine also if the oil producing areas, I don't know if you've been to the creeks of Delta and rivers where this oil comes from. Of course, they can no longer fish. The whole area is already polluted. Now, but imagine if they make the money directly themselves on oil.
And pay tax on it.
And pay tax to the federal government. Now tell me, which governor or which premier will remain in seat if his people are neglected in the way they are neglected now? Because the truth is that whether you take the Lagos example, or you take the rivers example, or you even let's take the food belt, much of the central part of the country. How much of extension services are the state governments carrying out with respect to their farmers? Now, and if, for instance, they are able to collect taxation in respect of the activities going on. Now, so what I'm saying is that all these productive centers will now be taxed at the center. But first and foremost, you have the power to control your resources. Then, once you have that, why do you want to struggle and break pipes? Because the moment you bomb your pipes, it means that it is you who is losing revenue. In fact, the local people will fight such a group. Because all they do is to pay tax to Abuja the way Lagos State is paying tax to Abuja, the same way that the Kanu farmers are paying their own, and then mineral resources are burned under the soil of practically all the nationalities in Nigeria. Whether you are talking of gold, you are talking of whatever, mention it, the mineral is there in Kano, everywhere. Now, imagine if these federating units are able to mine these resources and pay tax to the federal government. So what it then portends is that the federal government will still make its income, but all the federating units now will have the energy, the vivaciousness to pursue their own productive sectors of the economy. See to the education of their children, to the health of their children, in a way that the federal government, collecting all the money now, lacks the capacity to do so. Even not talking about any malice, we are talking of human capacity to understand the problems in all the parts of the country.
But our political structure is a complex thing. In fact, some ideas that came out of, well, not so much the conference as conversations with participants after the conference were along the lines of, well, you know, the country is the way it was. Allegedly, when the previous president was in power, understandably, according to some, understandably according to them, a lot of stuff was really under South-South control. And indeed, they were saying that that's the way that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's what you sort of expect. Well, now that we have this particular administration, especially to any Southwesterner that is complaining of marginalization, is going to cite that example and saying, look, that's the way it is. Now, I'm reminded that when President Obasanjo was in power, I'm not sure the same argument could be made, because the Southwest would probably say that we profited absolutely nothing
Well, we probably didn't put Obasanjo there, and he didn't owe us anything, according to him. So he didn't do anything for us. But the important thing is this: the federal government must at all times be in a position to look after the interest of all the component parts of the country.
Which you don't think is what is
all the component parts of the country. Now, you spoke about the former government of Jonathan laying emphasis on now, but again, I must make a concession that this is a government, the present government, in a slow space, really, because if he had completed all his appointments, as we speak, ambassadors have not been appointed. As we speak, hundreds of the boards of the vital institutions in the country have not been constituted. So you really cannot put your hand on what the end story will be. But the important thing is that any central government must be able to cater for all Nigerians, because there is no part of the country as we speak that lacks the people with the capacity, with the intellectual capacity, the integrity to hold and run any of the offices. So it will not be justifiable as it is presently that you now have, for instance, all the heads of security agencies coming from a part of the country. That in itself does not give confidence, because then people can say, well, it means that we are not trusted. That is why.
Especially as the argument is made that, well, in this kind of a situation, the president, has a right to put those he trusts most.
But the argument would also be that maybe we are not trusted. That is why a Yoruba man cannot be chief of army staff. What time has a Yoruba man been chief of army staff before? People will now say, oh, it's all about the military, they have their... But it's also so that over the years, would it be an accident that since General Alani Akinrinade, that we've not had another chief of army staff? That was in 1979-80, and that was it. Now, you also
so is
look
that an
at,
accident?
Is it an accident?
Is it just a happenstance?
Is it a happenstance?
Those are the kind of questions.
That's the kind of questions, and that's the preponderance of the security personnel, head of police, NSS, this, that, you can go on.
Okay, but talking from the point of view of the Southwest,
yes.
How does one put it? The highest elected Southwesterner, the Yoruba, is the vice president. Yeah. And he was represented there by Senator Judu. And so the vice president speaking at that convention, the essence of it seemed to be that, look, hold on, keep hope alive. It's a work in progress. That seems to me to suggest that all of these concerns are probably, very, very much being addressed, but that it's not going to happen overnight and that it's being worked at. You were there, so how do you evaluate that particular contribution?
No, well, that is what, of course, naturally I must expect from a head of government to instill confidence to the governed. But I need to say this. If he's not believed as he should have been believed, and mark my words, I said, if he is not believed as he should have been believed, it would be because there is that feeling that you need institutions to effect the kind of changes that can solve those problems. Now, we speak about the fight against corruption, for instance. I mean, this is the boldest fight that has taken place for quite a long time. But we also must admit that unless you have the institutions there, it isn't just a question of, okay, somebody is corrupt, you have the institution that can arrest him, try him, get him jailed. But is it also possible that the institutions that will not enable, that will make it difficult for a corrupt person to make away with such funding? And I say this with a tongue in cheek. Let me explain that if, for instance, you are having a budget that you lack the capacity to manage, and that happened for so many years that once December was approaching, they now look at what is left and they start, because they must exhaust it. Yeah. But because, what had they been waiting for all the year round? What had they been waiting for all the year round? That the projects that should have been managed, the institutions that should have been supported or built were not built. So if the capacity is not there, you would always have such low funds.
Was it an absence of capacity or a strategic, as some people say, strategic kind of operation to leave it exactly as you said, so that there's a lot more?
I can say that part of it would
towards
also,
the end that
part
you can
of it would also have to do with capacity, because the federal government or the unitary government are beating more than it can chew. Because most of what is the business of the federal government? Building houses. They only need to have policies on housing, the states and the local government areas.
So the recent idea that the federal government will, in some instances actually be building houses, you think?
But for me, it is one anti-federal in concept, it's anti-federal in concept. The federal government has no business. And when you talk of education, maybe tertiary education, but all the others would have to be on policies, not getting directly involved. The federal government really has no business calling certain rules federal rules. Of course, they can assist at the beginning in laying out certain superstructures, which should revert immediately back to the states as you go on. So what I'm saying is that in Abuja, you cannot be there and play the Father Christmas as it is, because you lack the capacity to be in Maiduguri and be in Lagos and be in Port Harcourt and be in Kano. It is just not there.
It simply can't be omnipresent.
So the load, the body of governance, whether it is health management, whether it is housing, the major responsibilities should have been on the respective federating units.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Wale Oshimbi. It seems that there's so very much on this particular, on restructuring plate. I'll take a break now, come right back. And there's a part that the Constitution also must play in all of this. Yeah. I imagine. You talked about institutions, and also, we'll look at that. So stay with us, please. We'll be right back, and we'll also include your calls. Okay, welcome back. We're looking at the whole issue of restructuring, and in particular, the Southwest zone, geopolitical zone, had a conference, and they looked at this particular idea. Now, we've been looking at Honorable Wale Oshun is our guest, and he's been saying that there's so many different aspects to it, and we spent the first half of the program looking at these aspects. Now, the Constitution, because the Constitution is going to be key here. You spoke about institutions that are going to be necessary for us to do a good job, but also I imagine the Constitution is a part of it. In the kind of idea that you've espoused, where everybody is working on his area of comparative advantage and comparative strength, yeah, one can see it, in an ideal case scenario. Take the Niger Delta, for example. I've heard the comment made that, tell me how many Niger Deltans have oil blocks, for instance. That is one sore point. People have said that there are a lot that want this situation to remain the way it is because, going back, paraphrasing Aregbesola, saying that just a few people are holding on to the wealth of this nation, and just about everybody else is poor. The Constitution, the problem with the Constitution, if one were to be as simplistic as possible, is that opening phrase, we the people, is a lie. It is not we the people that have put that document together.
Well, you know that the present Constitution of 1999 was, let me call it a contraption of General Abdul Salam, of course, which he inherited from General Abacha. So we need to admit that ab initio. But it's the content really that should interest us. The content, what does it prescribe? Whether it is about presidential or allowing federating units, for instance, to say that, well, okay, if you think, for instance, that the best mode of structure that you like is parliamentary, you can have it. Anybody else who thinks it's presidential in his own federating unit can have it. Now, you need that kind of provisions in a constitution. So it means that our constitution, as presently modeled, cannot stand and should not stand. And the request had been on for so long that apart from the independence and republican constitutions, which of course drew the sweat of our forefathers, the Awolowo, the Sardauna, Azikiwe, Tafawa Balewa, which drew their sweat, that no other constitution, not even the 1988-89 one, which Babangida tried to put together, gave any measure of credence to the people. So the issue is this, that as we presently stand, people will talk about having another constitutional review. Is it a full review? Is it an amendment by the National Assembly? But the National Assembly lacks, in terms of its composition and its mandate, would not be, I won't say prepared, but would not be.
It won't be enthusiastic.
Would not be enthusiastic, really.
It really.
In making far-reaching decisions. I mean, do you imagine that the National Assembly can take a decision that they become part-time? No, they are not likely to do so. Or is it that they are likely to tinker with the National Revenue Commission in stating that, okay, maybe there is no member of the National Assembly or member of government that should earn a salary that is higher than that of the public civil servant. They are not likely to do that. So they are not therefore prepared. So what would be necessary would have been a small team, elected, nominated, it would not really matter. A combination, to look at what has been done. But essentially, we have had series of reports. 2014 Confab report is there. The one that gave rise to the Obasanjo attempt, which he tried to do, is also there. You also had the attempt by the National Assembly to go around the country. There are reports that if the government is really keen on, can be looked into. But the agitations of Nigerians is more about taking their fate in their hands, but giving that sovereignty about security, about foreign affairs, about economy to the central government.
Okay, Mr. Lawale from Ikorodu, good morning. You want to join this conversation?
Oh, good morning, Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, God bless you. I want to sincerely thank the Honorable for his consistent and dogged fight to make Nigeria better. God will bless you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We are clamoring for restructuring. Let's be sincere with ourselves. Look, the presidential system is not meant for a poor country like Nigeria. It's too expensive. In fact, in my various contributions, I said, look, we are underdeveloped. Stop referring to yourself as a developing country. You have no indices of being a developing country. Okay? That as it may be. Let that restructuring be in two phases, major and minor. My brother, the states themselves are too reckless. That is why most of them are almost bankrupt now. What is a state with doing, a state that has no money, doing with 20 commissioners, dealing with about 40 advisors? Where will they get money for developmental efforts in that state? Then in respect of Niger Delta, let's be sincere. They get money from about 4 sources from the Federation. There's Niger Delta Development Commission, there is this Federal Ministry of Niger Delta, then there is 30% derivation. Have they ever used that 30% derivation, which is a huge amount of money, to develop the oil producing area? That's why this agitation is, but nobody is, but even the so-called Avengers and the rest, they don't want to query and question their leaders. And on the major side, which is the major, Nigeria, we need to restructure. When Awolowo, Sardauna, Azikiwe were there, what was the population of Nigeria? And we were able to survive on agriculture. But all of us abandoned agriculture and started building petrol stations everywhere. And in 1976, when I was in HSC, there was an article we wrote. It said, let disaster not await this country after the oil boom. For after the oil boom will come in, and the period of oil boom has come. Let us have a rethink. God bless you.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Lawale, for calling in, a namesake of our guest. Well, so what he's saying is that this agitation for to do the right thing, to do the efficient thing, yes. Because really there's a sense in which beyond the politically correct thing, also we need to be efficient. Yes. I was reading, most people have heard that South Africa has eclipsed Nigeria as the largest so-called economy. All of these are things that need to be addressed. Now the Southwest holding this conversation among themselves, where did they sort of end up with? You know, sort of general principles, if any?
No, well, the general principles were to keep on asking for a look or a decision to be taken on the restructuring, but also to agree that the Southwest governments, and this is on a serious note, need to be more proactive, to relate more strongly with the center. Because for the first time, we are participants. We cannot claim that we are being rubbished.
Yes.
So they should be able to go up there and ask for their entitlements. And when I say entitlements, take the issue of agriculture. There are so many agricultural funds outside there now. But you have cassava, you have tuber funds, you have fertilizer. But how much or how many of these concepts are the Southwest governments keying into? So we also asked them to be more proactive, and that was actually the main content of Ajimobi's delivery when he said, now you should be the one challenging the center to take what you think belongs to you. That could also be an outcome of the conference, that we need to be much more aggressive in asking for what belongs to us.
Chief Afua, calling in from Yaba. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Yori.
Thank you for calling in, sir.
I must confess to you, this is one of the best programs you have enlightened so far inside this program.
You're very, very kind. Thank you.
The Baba there is talking facts. I'm surprised for two things, that the politician is talking in this manner from Southwest. I'm not also surprised because the Southwest has been at the forefront of political affairs in this country. He is talking facts. I don't want to waste too much time, but to emphasize that he's talking facts about restructuring. I'm so excited when he mentioned about the resource control. When the Delta people were talking about resource control, every other people was thinking that maybe they want to catch on the golden goose, where they get the golden goose from. But it's far more than it. An APC politician talking in this manner, it means there's good things to happen in this country.
Okay.
I thank you and I salute you, sir. And your please let us make sure this man's ideas get to where it should get to, so that there will be implementation. That is the only problem. And now I suggest the parliamentary system of government. It's so wasteful for us to practice the presidential system of government. It is not ideal for our country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Afua, for calling in. When Ajimobi was challenging, I remember I read that, say, look, when I wanted your votes, I went around looking for you. I went to all the nooks and crannies of the place. Okay, now you want something. Have you come to challenge me? Have you come looking for me? So,
which is also to say that when you are here in the Southwest, as governments, as people, also challenge the center.
Yes.
To ask for what you think are your normal entitlements, even within the scope of the present imbalances. You know, at least that can be a first step, but we keep on clamoring for restructuring.
I think in the Southwest they have something of a think tank, the Dawn Commission, Development Agenda for Western Nigeria.
Yes, we do.
Now, is that is something in the right direction, right?
It is, certainly it is. The Dawn Commission came about because we saw the need for the governments of the Southwest, irrespective of party affiliations, you know, to collaborate. Because we found that it would be necessary for economies of scale for certain infrastructural projects that each state, as presently constituted, can never be able to, you know, carry out. Like having, for instance, an intra-city railway, maybe only Lagos has been able to attempt it. Now, but this is something that will benefit Oyo State. So this is something that they can collaborate on.
They can strategize.
They can strategize.
Because there's an intellectual part to all of this as well.
In terms of even evolving the policies on agriculture, the policies on agriculture, because each of the Southwest states also is known for certain things. Lagos is marine, part of Ogun, part of Ondo, of course, is also marine. But essentially, you also have an arid section at the borderline with the north.
So that's the kind of thing.
It's the kind of collaboration that we
the
think
development agenda for Western Nigeria.
The whole
Mr. Abdul Karim, calling in from Yola. Thank you very much for holding on. Please go ahead now.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Ori.
Good morning.
Morning, how are you, Mr. I want to thank this very Baba,
Honorable Oshun.
Honorable Osho. Why I say I want to thank him because he has solved the real problem of this country. But the major problem, governors of various states, they are the people that will get in this country. I myself, I'm saying my mind because they are the problem of this country because of they are getting money from the center. They abandon local government. Look, Mr. Let me give you a simple example. No local government in this country that is getting money less than 100 million. And some salary of local government is no more than 25 million. Then you tell me you refuse to pay them. What is the contribution to the state for local government? So totally failure. So for me, if federal government wants to help people, let them try and still move the same motion during Jonathan and remove local government under John account. Situation will change in this country because they are getting a wolf money. That's why you see they are relying on federal accounts. They will not prepare themselves to get internal generating revenue. Please, let federal government think about it. If not, our democracy is collapsing. That's my own contribution for these issues. Thank you, Mr. Yori.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdul Karim, calling in from Yola. When the last time, before now, that the whole idea of this whole idea of restructuring came about, I think between the APC and the presidency, they had said that at the time that it wasn't an urgency at all. It wasn't an urgent matter. In fact, they distanced themselves from it. Is it because it wasn't presented rightly and it sort of scared them a bit? Because they're concerned mostly with the unity and integrity of the nation, that unit called Nigeria. And so I think they're a bit scared that, look, this kind of thing gets out of hand. The next thing you have is people beginning to wanting to, break up the country.
No, well, I think we must admit that maybe scaremongering by those who feel that they will lose if there is a restructuring. Maybe that.
Okay.
But I need to state this, that there is nothing, absolutely nothing to be scared about. But I also would not think the party would deliberately, because it is an aspect of the manifesto to look into, the issues of devolution of power. All we have discussed today is about devolving power from the almighty federal government or unitary government to the federating units, so that we can have a functional, effective, efficient federal government.
But we all
Devolution of
yes,
power from that almighty. But
but how do we come to agree that?
But that is where the issue of leadership comes in.
Okay, one moment, sir. I've been holding on to Abe calling in from Alimosho, and then we'll return to this whole point of how do we now agree that? Okay. Good morning, Mr. Abe.
Good morning.
Please go ahead now.
I want to appreciate what is going on. I'm a member of APC. We voted for change. Since 2010, I've been following the president, Mr. Buhari. And when they got to power, we expect them to carry on this restructuring. They are expecting it. We believe in the system. I believe in Mr. President. I believe in the Vice President. This is our government. This is one of the reasons why we took over power from PDP. And we expect them to do the right thing. Nigerians are looking up to this present government to follow through with the restructuring. We want this thing done. If it is done, I appreciated the honorable what you have been saying. It is fantastic. We need it. We need this control if states need to develop. We don't have an issue for not developing. If a state can concentrate on what they have and develop instead of focusing on the center. Some governors are so lazy. They just want to have the money and just spend the money among themselves. We need this thing. We need each state, like Lagos State is doing, to look inward and produce for the citizens. Give security, give protection, give resources. Let the youth be empowered. Let them be engaged. We have so many things to do. Please, I just pray that the presidency, they are watching your program, because they need to, I think you need to send them a copy of this video, of your recording. You need to keep sending it to them. Let them have access to it. Let them listen to it, because anytime I walk on the street, they always tell me, these are the people of change. Look at you. And I'm still standing on the fact that we can make it right, because we are in power. Both the Lagos and the second, we are in power. We can make it right. I believe in the government. May God help this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling in, Abe. So people have been passionate about it, but the government at the center, through the ages, has tended to try to douse this agitation without wanting to be seen to be undemocratic or dictatorial about it.
Well, Yari, let me put this to you.
Sure.
You are head of the family, and all the children, they make money. The existing tradition is that they bring it to you, and every month $1 million is put on your table to do as you please, and then you give them back spending money, and then suddenly they are asking you to, no, Papa, let us keep this money, then we give you stipend to maintain yourself. Initially, you will resist it. Initially, because those in government, why did Jonathan not carry out restructuring in 6 years? Because he also fell into that slumber. He fell into that slumber of...
So the last caller made the point about the lack of creativity,
yes,
on the heads of the...
On the heads of governments. Yes. He fell into the slumber. I mean, Nigerians would benefit from this, but essentially his own people, in fact, who had been clamoring, we have been clamoring, but he felt comfortable with the enormous amount of power. Now, how do you expect that General Buhari, the president, will now willingly, concedingly give out some of these powers? It will call for leadership. It will call for determination, dedication. In fact, he would have a lot of explanation to make to his own primary constituency. If he chooses to, but his greatest legacy would be for him to restructure, start it, complete it, and hand over a restructured country at the end of his term. Whether it is 1 or 2 terms, it will not matter. But his greatest legacy would be for him to restructure and hand over a restructured country in which powers have been devolved to the most efficient level.
Thank you very much, Honorable Olawale Osun. We're going to have to leave it there. There's a heck of a lot more that can be said about this subject, but not within the space of almost 1 hour that we have. But I want to thank you very much, Chairman Afenifere Renewal Group and a one-time Chief Whip at the House of Representatives. Thank you very much for sharing your ideas with us.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow, God being my strength, with a fresh edition of the program. And on behalf of Honorable Wale Osun once more, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Yori Folani. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.